Welcome back to the Success is Complicated podcast. I am your host, Raquel.
And I am your co-host, Sierra Davis.
All right, Mrs. Davis. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. I had said that, we kind of just caught up over the weekend while we were driving here.
Right.
So, today, what I want to talk about, and Sierra's like, what's getting ready to come out? Because we didn't really talk about like the details around this. We had talked about like polarity management, but I seen this post, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been sitting with it all week. It said the things you need to hear in your head now as an adult aren't that much different from the things you needed to hear back then as a kid from an adult you trusted. It's okay. Try again. You're okay. Don't panic. You've got this. Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. I guess I sat on this post because in some ways it's like, we can agree to disagree, right? Like I understand exactly what the post is saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because children don't necessarily understand like anything about life really, right? Like the encouragement. Not that adults don't need encouragement because we need it. We need it as well. I just think it maybe that it looks different maybe. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I guess when I hear that post and I just think about life in general, I think that like facts, right? Those are the things that, could support you in your journey. It's just take a breath, breathe, don't panic. Because, I guess what we talk about a lot of times is, don't take it too seriously, right? Because that's when you get all wrapped up in the...
But you expect kids to take a lot about just life in general seriously.
What are you saying?
Like when you say don't take stuff so... When you say... Well, let me go back. What do you mean when you say like just don't take stuff so seriously?
I'm saying as an adult.
Okay.
Like, don't take life too seriously. Like, don't get so fixated on a certain outcome or whatever. So, and a lot of times we grow up and we get fixated. We put these things on ourselves, and which has us to, really, really like go. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but
okay. Well, I'll tell you in my mind. So, this week I had did because I've been thinking about rebranding. Success is Complicated, right? Mm-hmm. And somebody asked me like, "What is your brand voice?" And I was like, "What you mean?" And also thinking about the things that I was dealing with at work this week, right? Like all of these different polarities and watching how people would try to solve for a problem and not necessarily find the balance between certain things. So I was thinking about like my like the brand voice of Success is Complicated. And like compassion came up, right? Mm-hmm. But if you lean, like, I guess what's the other side of compassion? You lean too far into. So let me go back to like, okay, I'm putting my thoughts together. So when we talk about like the platform of Success is Complicated with like having coaches and developing adults to be able to be with complexity, the balance between doing exactly what this post said, plus finding like that balance of accountability. And I was thinking if you're leaning too far on one side, like what does it not offer? And I feel like a lot of polarities have presented itself like this week. For example, my dad asked me yesterday, he was like, "How do you feel I've done as a parent?" And I was like, well, for me, I feel like I've gotten the best of both worlds. I think that my mom showed a lot of tough love, which may have supported me on the accountability side. And I think that my dad was very nurturing. But I think that you need both. Like, and I was telling my dad, I think that with maybe some of your other kids, maybe like that nurturing takes a whole nother level with like his ability to unconditionally love us, that there's no drive for accountability. So, and he was like, I don't necessarily disagree with that, but I was just thinking that when we lean so far on like one side of life with trying to fix a problem, I don't know that we end up fixing anything. And I was thinking that, like, how important is it for us to learn to, rather than trying to fix problems, learning how to manage polarities in life. And I thought about it from a personal standpoint, right? Independent versus interdependent, and thought about myself as a wife. I take pride in being independent and being able to do things like for myself, by myself, and on my own. Mm-hmm. Now, I also understand today that that mentality can have an effect on can impact your marriage in different ways, because, like, part of being human is learning how to be interdependent too. So I don't know, I was just thinking about, like, what does it mean to really like find the balance in life? And when we're not, so for example, going back to the whole independent, right? If you're in a marriage and you like pride yourself on being independent, like that's something that you feel good about. I also see the other side of it, right? Which is you start to point the finger at your partner for probably not helping the way that you would want, but never realizing that like the way that I'm moving right now is very independent. I'm not looking for any ways to be interdependent, because like my voice matters. I want to make sure that I don't lose myself in this marriage or whatever it may be. So it's being able to, I don't know, I feel like there is a such thing as balance in life, right? But I think that when you shift your perspective in terms of what balance means, it's not about like solving a problem, and really understanding what the polarities are that you may be managing. I gotta go ahead.
So what is it that post represented for you? Or lack of representation for you, sounds like.
So I get the post, right? I think what that post, because we're talking about managing polarities, right? I think that there's something about like being able to be alone in the world too. Mm-hmm. But also understanding that like people also contribute to us. And I think what ends up happening is, so what stood out to me is, I think that we're pushing the interdependent piece a whole lot today. And on the other side of that, you don't push people's capabilities to be able to recognize like their own strength, their own power. And I get it as a kid, because I get it, but I still think that even with that, you have to be able to find a balance with that, because we want to equip people to be able to do life.
So was it the words of needing to hear that from another adult?
Yeah,
that has you.
Yeah, in adulthood, yes, and maybe it was like I think that whenever we talk about like you need this, especially from other people. Mm-hmm. One, I think that it represents like the scarcity, right? Like you have the ability to give yourself the same thing that other people can give to you too. And granted, I know that some people may feel like they don't have the ability to do that, which is why I still say, the interdependent part is still very important.
Okay, that makes sense. I guess when I heard you may need it from another adult, that was something that was like, because those are the things that you kind of tell yourself like, ooh, chill. Mm-hmm. It's not that serious. But I guess if we, relate to ourselves in relation to other people, sometimes you may need to hear that, like, girl, don't take it so seriously.
Right.
But I get what you're saying.
What are you picking up? Because I love when you like paraphrase or clarify like these raw thoughts that we end up having just out on the podcast.
I get that what you're saying is, as a child, we need guidance and we need support from other people. Meaning, it's inevitable that a child will need someone to say, don't take life so seriously, like, just breathe, all those other things. But when you walk into adulthood or as an adult, some of those things you need to be able to give to yourself.
Yes, that's what I'm trying. Because, I feel like even in like marriage or friend, just any type of relationship, right? I think that society is starting to lean more to like, if you can't give me this, then what people do is kind of like go into their bubble. And I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Because I was thinking, I remember like an older version of me would be like if I had not grown, right? Be like, Danny, did you listen to the podcast yet? Like, what did you think about the podcast, right? Mm-hmm. And you remember when we first started, like I needed to know that he had listened to the podcast and that he was supporting, right?
Right.
Today, I don't really care. Like, I don't care if he listens to an episode. I don't care about any of that stuff. And I think part of it is because I don't seek that external validation like outside of myself anymore. Like, it's great to hear him like in the mornings before I leave. He was like, oh, what y'all talking about today?
Right.
And to me, that is a form of support. But I think we can get so attached to what support looks like that we can't recognize like what's right in front of us. And when I think about like my husband, like he has always offered support, but I have not been able to necessarily receive it because I too got attached to like what it looks like or the norms of how a husband should be showing up or behaving. Like he watched the episode with Crystal, but maybe he felt the connection to all of it, and like maybe the emotional aspect of it may have drawn him in. But I think that's a big shift.
Right.
Like learning how to sit in marriage alone too. Like, and people may be like, oh, for what? Like, what I got you for? But I think it's important to learn how to sit in marriage alone. And when you can sit in marriage alone, maybe how people say manifesting, I just feel like your world can open up to like greater possibilities. And maybe like that's my truth because that's what I feel like I'm living and walking in today.
What part?
That like it's okay to be alone in a marriage.
I don't think that's what you're saying. Somehow, I don't think that's what you're saying. I don't think you're like I'm in a marriage and I'm alone.
No, I don't feel alone in my marriage. However, there have been times where I have felt alone, but it's been based off of expectations. Right.
Okay, so I guess what you're saying is no matter the relationship, it's best to move away from expecting others to be or do any certain thing to be okay.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it before because we had talked about the existentialism, right? This whole theory that therapists can use. And part of it is like when you talk about like the 4 demands that we're going to face in life, isolation is one. And I think that there's benefit to learning to be alone or experiencing what it means to be alone. Now, granted, we're not leaving the other side of it off. I mean, you need to know your person or that thing, whoever you're with, right? Mm-hmm. But I feel like I've seen it a lot. I think about, my mind just went to like when people work for like these large organizations, right? They be so attached. Like when they in it, they're in it. And then the minute somebody give you some constructive feedback about like, this isn't necessarily working or you could do things a little bit better, they start to feel alone. And it's like, oh, they're not supportive. This environment is not inclusive anymore. And I think, I don't know that if it really truly allows you to like grow and evolve in that sense.
Because it sounds like what you're saying is the relationships are one-sided, right? Like where you expect to be able to show up in your fullness, wholeness, whatever, and the other person or corporation or whatever, as soon as they have some input or they do it a different way,
or they flaws show, or it shows that they're human, right?
Right. There is a need for you to pull back or to be, I guess,
to start reprioritizing like your entire life. Like everything was all bad. People usually go to the other side and like, it was all bad. Everything was bad. Now when I think about it, they actually weren't there for me. They never provided me the support. It was just that I was really performing at a very high level. Like I was a high potential. So it worked. But then when life got a little rough, but the truth be told, people are making decisions, hard decisions every single day, like reprioritizing every single day. Like I just don't feel that life is like personal like that.
Right.
I expect our children to feel that it's personal, but even like when and I'll use Neek because she's much older now, like, like you're finding the balance between the nurturing aspect, and in 2 years, Neek is walking right into adulthood. Like, how you play the game of life is important. And you know what Neek makes me, she makes me smile, because at one point I'm like, girl, when you gonna start getting some of the stuff that everybody's trying to tell you? And to see her like grasping some of those concepts today,
right?
I'm like, woo,
right.
So, it's important. Like Neek knows that you're always gonna be there for her, right?
Right.
But Neek, I can't pick you up every time like something don't go right in school or the teacher says it's like she has to lean into like that sense of accountability and responsibility.
Right. I mean, actually, the other day she told me, she was like, I'm not gonna always need you to drive me. Well, she was like, I'm not gonna always need you.
Right.
And I was like, woo. And she was like, oh no, I'm gonna always need my mommy though. But that was her recognizing that she is growing into a young woman.
Right.
And that
you think she recognized it?
Well, I think
she might just be excited about growing up in the sense of autonomy and independence.
Right.
Independency, because y'all see her as a helicopter mom.
I'm not a helicopter mom.
She's getting better. No, she's definitely a helicopter mom. Like I'm like, girl, you let that girl outside. Let her outside.
I think know your children.
Let her outside, because she gonna do what she gonna do anyway. That's the thing about people, including kids. They gonna do what they gonna do anyway.
Right, they will. So, but I guess I get what you're saying. Just removing the expectation from relationships for people to be a certain way or to show up a certain way. And when they don't, it doesn't mean that you have to reprioritize your life or pull back or go into isolation, right?
Right.
But isolation is not a bad thing if that is what you choose.
Right. Well, I think it's okay to choose it too. I think that whenever, because I mean, you can go anywhere when you're talking about your job and be feeling inclusive, feeling supported and all those things. But that stuff is so internal. Like, it made me think about like our belief systems.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people, there's this guy named Bruce Lipton, right?
Mm-hmm.
He talks about like the power of your belief systems and how his research has led him to see that our belief systems have the ability to contribute to like our well-being, meaning genetics and all of that stuff is like just a piece, right?
Right.
Environmental stuff is just a piece. Like how, and I think we say it often, right? Like your mind is so powerful. I don't think that we realize that every single thing that comes out of our mouth is a belief.
Right.
Like when I say, like, I just gave some beliefs here, but being able to distinguish between if those beliefs are serving you or not is very important, because I think that a lot of us don't realize that when we go into these relationships, whether it be with like jobs, partners, friendships, or whatever, right? We think that, relationship, if you're not adding to me, then what? Like, what am I here for? That's a belief.
Right. Right.
That's a belief.
And a belief like that can be very destructive, right? Because you can go into a place to where you don't necessarily immediately see the value and miss out on a tremendous value because you aren't able to initially see it because the situation isn't adding to you.
Right.
So, or you don't
I think we really do it as we get older too.
Because we say we know ourselves, right?
We know ourselves.
The older we get,
we know
like,
what we need.
I'm
We know
more
what we want.
I think we hear it a lot when people talk about when they get into their 30s, like, oh yeah, I know myself a lot more now.
Yep.
And when I'm 40, ooh baby, like I was just, I really knew myself then, so I was saying everything.
Yeah.
But I think the moment that we think that we know ourselves,
because the self is always evolving. Like it's always evolving, it's always changing, or it has the ability to.
You want to think that yourself is always evolving and always changing.
Right. Because one of my girl, they lost their job. No, she lost her, and I saw it coming, and I didn't think we were a good fit. That's besides the point. But it's like you see all of the potential. Like you see all of the potential, and then we can get so caught up on like our existing knowledge, our past successes, that like our mind really becomes like a prison.
Right.
Like your mind really becomes a prison to where you can't hear or see anything else. And what ends up like some people may bounce back from it, and then some people fall into victim and like defensiveness attitude. Like they did this to me. And I don't know.
So are you saying before you go there, maybe choose isolation over that?
I do think it's important for you to be okay with feeling alone. When I think about like this one person that lost their job, change was happening, right? And they didn't agree with just any of the change, and that's okay. Being able to sit alone that I don't necessarily agree with this change, but also being able to come on the other side and be like, I may not agree with any of this for XYZ, but
let's see where it goes.
Let's see where it goes. And because you weren't able to do that, you didn't lost your job. Granted, I believe that everything happens for a reason, but I also know that depending on the work that you do for yourself from a developmental standpoint, sometimes it can be hard to bounce back from that, especially as an adult, because the older that we get, our cognitive functions, like they start to decline no matter what.
If you're not able to create reason or meaning from that event.
Yeah, like, because that's a given. Like if your cognitive functions, like you and I sitting here, right? Mm-hmm. The older that we get, like it's inevitable that cognitive functions are going to decline. Like our ability to problem solve and do some of the things that we're able to do today, like as we get older, those things start to decline. Knowing that those things will start to decline just because of, that's the science aspect. But the other part is depending on how you work on yourself cognitively, we also have the ability to develop like neuroplasticity, which means that we're creating space for
pathways.
Yeah, for exactly.
Learning.
Right. Neuropathway, and that is so important for adults. And I think that oftentimes we shut it out because we think that we're grown.
Right. I definitely see that. To immerse yourself in new places, new experiences, or just open yourself up in a new way. It's important to us. Like I think the biggest question is how.
Right. I was even thinking when I was doing like this, thinking about like rebranding, And I was like, all right, what does this success is complicated community look like? And sometimes I had the ability to lean so far on them. But I said like-minded peers, like, I don't want to be around like-minded people.
Right.
I really don't. I don't want to be around like-minded people. I want to be around people that may offer something different that's going to support me in like leveling up.
Well, I guess talk about that a little bit more, right? Because we always say, "Oh yeah, girl, we're a lot alike, and we think alike, we do all these things." But how does that not support you versus someone who offers a new perspective and new way of looking at things?
So you're talking about like you and I?
No.
Okay. Ask, what's the question again?
I was asking, like, how does that support you? Like, being around people who offer a different perspective or a different lens of looking at things.
I think that it contributes to your overall like mental well-being. Mm-hmm. When I think about mental health, I always say that if mental health, if we were to summarize it in 3 words, how you think, feel, and behave, right? And how you think and feel and behave should always be developing. Like, you don't think the same way at 30, 40, 50, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that it has the potential to offer something like this. Where my mind is going is, I saw that post about Raph, y'all, right? That kid that was murdered. I mean, not murdered. Oh my gosh, that's not what I meant. But he was shot because he went and knocked on the wrong door, like going to pick up his twin siblings. And I immediately got emotional when I saw that post. I started crying. I called C, of course. And I was like, girl, did you see this? And where my mind had went to was like, he survived, right? Which is not what we normally see, but God. I didn't stay stuck there. Like, I allowed myself to feel what I feel. But you and I even had 2 different perspectives on it. Now, I don't know where you are today. No, yeah, because I had said like a couple of days later, I was talking about like, we always talk about what does it mean to grow within the Black community, right?
Right.
If we're always attached to what it means to be Black, like it's very difficult to step outside of our world. And I was like, hey, C, did you hear about the white girl that was in a car and drove up in somebody's driveway and she was shot too? And you said, I let you say what you said.
What did I say? I don't know what I said, girl.
Girl, you said they gaslighting us. You said that was a form of gaslighting.
No, seriously, like that. I mean, if you look and recognize patterns, which is what part of what I do as a trader is recognize patterns, right? And whenever we have these events, like all of a sudden the news come out and there's this Caucasian person or a white person or a Hispanic person who's just experienced the same thing, right? But honestly, although I said to you that they're gaslighting us,
you meant that shit.
So if we just rewind back to when you initially said it, my first, I actually saw it before you called me and told me about it.
Right.
80-year-old white man. Chances are you're probably dealing with some mental health decline, dementia, or mental illness. But
you say wet now, child. Okay.
No.
Yes. No. Well, I tell you where. I tell you what made me emotional about it. What made me emotional about it was when I saw that he had survived, and I was like, man, like, how do you, as a parent, explain to him why somebody would do that to you, right? That was the initial emotional part. That was like my Blackness, right? And I say, like, what does it look like to step outside of your Blackness, Quayle? What does it look like for you to step away from being like a Black mom? And I refuse to accept that people kill or try to kill us because we're Black. People do what they do because of whatever is going on internally with them. And that was, to me, that was my shift. Like, I think that guy decided to do what he did because of some of the reasons what you're saying too. There's mental decline, but I think at the core of it, hate. People shoot or kill for different reasons. They don't kill because like you deserve that. But I think I've been able to open my mind or have broader perspectives based off of my experiences and my exposure so far. Like, and I think that, that's the other thing about internalizing everything that other people do.
Right.
Like everything ain't about you.
Right. It will create hurt, pain, confusion, all of those things. If you internalize it all, right? If you make it all about you, if you make it all about this is happening to people of our color and
it's hard to move away from that.
I guess the news could give you an opportunity to decide something else,
right?
By showing something else. But I guess it you make a very valid point. It is like the core of a being, right? Because even
I guess the polarity, polarity, Black versus being a human. That's a hard one, but.
What do you mean?
So the problem to solve, right? Like if we're solving a problem is, all right, we have these unjust systems, like we need to fix it, right? Mm-hmm. And what ends up happening is just like, we need systems in place, right? Like you stop at a red light, right? You go on a green light. Like what does the balance look like? Because I say all the time on the podcast, I'm not oblivious to like what America was built upon. I'm not oblivious to it in no way. But I think that if I speak as a Black person, I do think that as long as we're focused on fixing the problem, like how do we end up finding solutions? And you can't internalize everything that's happening. Part of evolving and growing is being able to have broader perspective so you can start to think about what solutions will look like. And when I say Black versus being a human, like if I'm leaning so far over here with being Black, then how does it contribute to the greater good of society as a whole? Because the world doesn't revolve around just Black people.
Right.
And that can be hard to accept because of all of the pain that we have endured.
I get that.
I want to know what you're thinking. We're processing right now.
I mean, not necessarily processing because, as a Black woman, I definitely understand that the world doesn't revolve around Blackness or people being Black. I do get how easy it is to personalize all of the Black things that happen in America. However, exposure experiences has taught me that pain does not just happen to the darker skinned people in America, right?
Pain happens to humans.
Right. Pain happens to humans. And actually it's only happening because we are human, right? We have the ability and the capacity to experience pain. But when
that's
you look
what being
out
with complexity looks like, though.
Like nature, right? Same thing happens. Like where, I saw a group of vultures eating at something when I was driving up the street the other day. Like no one considers that bad. Like, do you want a vulture near your home? No, because you don't want to pick up your small animal. But you also look at it as a part of their nature.
Right.
And when it comes to like good, bad, evil, all of those things, I think that we all have the capacity to carry it within us. And the more that we try and separate ourselves from it.
Ooh, I got chills.
Why?
Because what you're saying is powerful.
What do you mean?
I think it's the more that we try to separate, like recognizing that you have the ability to cause other people harm, you have the ability to do bad things, you have the ability to do evil things, like that is accountability on a whole nother level. Like, you know, because I think what we do as humans, we're like, but mine wasn't as bad as yours. Like, what you did was real bad.
Right.
What you did was real bad.
And there is no real bad, right? If it causes harm, if it causes pain, it causes harm, it causes pain. And you know, for a while growing up, I definitely didn't get and understand that, because there was a polarity for me, right?
Right.
It was, oh, but that was terrible. I mean, I just had did this one thing. But reality is that we all have the capacity. And I think that is how we move into compassion. When we continue to see it outside of ourselves, it becomes more difficult to be compassionate.
Yes. So this whole polarity management thing came from this guy like Barry Johnson. Mm-hmm. And I have it pulled up because I told you, like, this is where I've been, like, this week. Even wanting to know, like, myself, like, well, what problems are you focusing on solving, even in your business? That's where I've been focusing. Like, what problems are you trying to solve in your business? Because you can't be in business unless you have a problem to solve, right? Mm-hmm. That's what society says, right? But I also understand this whole polarity management thing, and one of the things I was thinking about, like, what does your brand represent? And resourceful is what came up. And what that means for me is the ability to pivot, feeling like that at every turn, every corner, like there's something there to support you. Mm-hmm. But Barry Johnson, like I was reading more about it this week, and it said there's a natural inclination to treat polarities as problems to be solved and lean too heavily in one direction or the other, instead of managing the polarity as a whole, because you start to understand that they are all interdependent. Like those two things, they create the whole. So when we lean, we begin to lose the positive aspects of that pole, and instead we begin to accumulate the negative aspects of overuse.
Right.
Go ahead.
You know, that little clip that you just said is so interesting, right? Because all that I just shared it can have you move so far over to compassion that there is no accountability, right? Because you like, woo, you are, you know, like, it's only, you know, it's just you just being you.
Right.
Like doing what all of us do. Or you can be, you know, without knowledge and be all the way on like certain things are just unacceptable.
Right.
So you definitely bring up a good point. And honestly, that's my thing now. Like, where is the balance? Like, where's the balance in the beauty and of just humanness all together, and then also being able to be accountable for those
polarities.
Right.
I just thought about mental health because I do feel like we have leaned so far over into like protect your mental health, fix your mental health. You know, all of those things that I don't think that I don't feel like this is my world, right? I don't feel that much is changing. Like the work that has been done in terms of destigmatizing. And I'll tell you, like, I don't know why Rav popped up into my feed because I feel like I have been avoiding certain type of news to protect my mental health. But I am so grateful that it did show up in my feed because it opened up a space to show me like where I've actually grown.
Right.
Because I did not internalize like I'm a Black mom and that could have been me. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't feel, because I definitely felt everything about that. Mm-hmm. But the other side was like, this was the first time that I heard myself say like, that man didn't kill because he was black. He killed because at the core there's hate.
Right.
Which allows me not to internalize it, because at the when we talk about belief systems, like what beliefs do you have about being black? And I think that a lot of us are not willing to say it. Like a lot of us walk around feeling not good enough, unworthy, and a lot of different things. And when we start to talk about like negative talk versus positive self-talk, like I'm not a big believer in like, oh, you wake up, like you got to keep giving yourself, granted, I understand the importance of affirmations, but I think after a while, them affirmations, they get tired. It's like at the core, what do you truly think about yourself?
Right. Because if you think that I am like, because I am black, I will be shot, or because I am black, I will be, targeted, or because
manifesting.
I am black,
we talk about manifesting all the time.
A bad experience,
right?
Then I think that you hold those things too close, so closely to you. And of course we're both not saying be oblivious to what is happening in America,
right,
or just in anywhere around the world.
When your relationships, on the job, all of that stuff.
Right. But
discernment is important. Yeah.
But when you hold those things too close to you, it doesn't allow you to really grow past that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Grow past, what do I see about myself today? I'm black and I deserve everything. I'm black and I deserve a seat at the table. I'm black and you
just made me think about I got this client that's come from another country into the US and worked for a large oil and gas company, and I was coaching her on Friday, and like I see her like strengths, her capability. In fact, the company sees it too. But girl, they getting over a little bit, but that's okay, because I say it's okay because if you can't see it yourself, you can't blame other people. Like if you don't see what you bring to the table, I just don't think that you can blame other people. Now, I know how easy it is to do, and I'm not saying that she was blaming, because she was not blaming anybody, but she had a belief system, and I thought that all I did was repeat it back to her. She said that the power to bees, like basically have your life in your hand, have your life in their hand. So, but she believes in like putting your head down, working. Somebody will notice you, and in a lot of ways they have noticed her, but she hasn't necessarily gotten she's got more responsibility, but she haven't necessarily gotten the title and pay that comes with it. But you have a fundamental belief that the power of the bees, that they're in control. So let me do all of these things, network, build these relationships. And I'm not saying that those things are not important, but at the core, you have no control.
Right.
You've taken all control. And when I repeated it back, she was like, Raquel. She was like, woo. And, we paused there because I know that she didn't form that belief overnight. It came from somewhere, but it's like really like rewiring yourself, because 95% of the time, like our day to day, even you and I, we're like hit and play. Because we're operating most of the time from our subconscious mind anyway.
Right.
We just hit play.
Right.
Just hit and play. And when you really like put that into context, like you have to put yourself in positions to grow. Like even me, sometimes I'm like, well, all right, you've gotten so attached to this. You really, really believe in this so much. Like, where is the space where you might not be like open?
Right. So it's looking at those spaces to where you may be open or too attached to an idea or thing.
And paying attention to your belief systems too. I think that, and when you think, if everything that comes out of your mouth is a belief system.
I was telling you the other day, I shock myself sometimes when I open my mouth to say some stuff and I be like, oh, I believe that. Let me look at that.
I I did that post about like survival mode the other day, and thought and wrote down like beliefs that come with that a lot of times like that we don't even know that's driving us, and then all of that be sounding good and be sounding like facts.
Right.
Like failure is not an option. Like I know what people are meaning when they say that, like keep going, keep pushing.
But failure is not an option, right? When
you ain't got no other options on the table. There are no other options on the table.
When you think about when you have a belief like that, right? Mm-hmm. And we definitely know everybody out there who feels successful, is successful on the road to a certain success. And of course, this is a belief, y'all, will meet failure at some point.
Right. But right, and I love, wait, hold on. Let's pause for a second. Because I love how you said that on your journey, right?
Right.
Everybody will meet failure. That, I mean, it's true because you said it's true, but that's not true because it's a belief.
Right.
Like everybody does not meet failure because some people really, what you may see as a failure, I may say like, girl, that was the best goddamn opportunity that presented itself.
Right.
Like it's less about that. And I think that what happens is like you can hold on to that belief. Like I'm always going to be meeting failure. And then that's why all that shit be feeling hard all the time because
I always meet failure.
I mean, well, you'll meet failure. Right. But the point is like, you know, when you think about like failure, like it starts to cause stress, overwhelm, doubt, like all of those things.
Right. I agree.
Now, I ain't saying get fixated on like every single thing that's coming out of your mouth, but I think that it's so important that you realize that you can, but realize that everything that comes out of your mouth is a belief. There's nothing that we, you know, when I had first heard that anything that you say or do can be challenged, I was like, no, but there's some facts. There's some facts. No, I don't think so. No, I really don't. I mean, no. Like if I tell you right now that it's 8:58 in the morning.
Of course, that's
the easiest one, right? But no, so it's a different time in Dubai. In Virginia right now is 9:58. So like anything truly can be challenged in life. Girl, I don't know.
So I guess I really, really feel like this episode was about like supporting our belief systems and learning how to pour into ourselves and not necessarily crouching away when a relationship or a business doesn't do what we think it should do or doesn't feel how we think it should feel. How do we support ourselves in those moments? I think that has been like the.
So mine is all. Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of rap.
Yeah, it's kind of like. No, I hear you. But
go ahead and.
I guess what just came to me as I just heard what you just said, right? I guess my mind went into like there's an opportunity to write down like your beliefs about relationships, your beliefs about companies, your beliefs about like being a mom, about being a wife, because that stuff that you think that is like Bible, nothing makes it Bible besides the fact that
you say so.
You say so. And I joke around all the time. For example, I'd be like, forget them kids. I love my kid. I never question the type of mom I am when I make that statement. I don't, because I don't believe that you're supposed to drag yourself in the ground for kids. And I'm laughing and looking at you right now because, you know, like her kids run track and she was outside yesterday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., right?
And the belief of dragging yourself in the ground, right?
That's how I see. That's a belief, right. But that's a belief that I have. What it looks like dragging myself in the ground. I'm not interested in spending my Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. doing track. I mean,
which is fine.
Right. But I think that you got to be willing. Like that doesn't cause me any stress. Like that's the point. It doesn't cause me any stress. But another person may feel like sports and all or whatever like there could be a belief system that is attached to that. I guess my belief system, I don't have to do it just because my kids say that they want to do it. Right. And I mean, you're totally different situations, and that may not be the best example, but I think that we have belief systems for every area of our life, and they could be either serving us or not serving us. And I think that because a lot of these belief systems can be supported by society, we don't know how to differentiate between solving a problem versus managing polarity, I guess. Because, you know, we always hear people say there's no such thing as work-life balance. Well, that's a belief. Because the way that you and I balance our working lives are totally different. Mine is I ain't signing up for track.
Right.
Like it, you know, it's just, and another parent may say, well, I'm going to sign up for track, but I have extra support. So, you know, my mama going to take them out there on the weekends, or I can hire a nanny, or, you know, do what you and Cliff do where y'all out there from 8 a.m., 8 p.m. and y'all set up and get all comfortable and like, you know, this is our world. We enjoy watching our kids do this, right?
Right.
So I just think that it depends. I got an idea that just came to my mind though, like maybe I'm going to take this week with the support of you and other people, like, and pay attention to people's language and pulling out beliefs about like relationships, motherhood, marriage, and all those things, and like challenge them things.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, y'all. You ready to close out? You ready to close?
Sure.
You good? Okay.
Great.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to us on this podcast each and every week. We appreciate your support. I feel like I'm getting a little emotional. Like, I mean, I feel that way. Thank you for your support. Thank you for coming for our repeat listeners. We appreciate you. Look, if you have something that you want us to talk about, like send me a message on Instagram. You can send me an email, however you need to, or send Sierra a message. We want to know what you would like to hear from us. Anything else?
No.
Follow us at Success is Complicated. Sierra did mention that she trades. I'm glad she mentioned it. You want to tell the people where they can follow you at? Because she posts, you know, Success is Complicated, but she also posts her trading stuff, and it's rooted in psychology, and I get some nuggets from it. So
you'll tag me.
Sometimes I tag you and sometimes I don't.
I'm sure I'm on the Success is Complicated page.
All right, y'all. Until next time, we'll see you next week. We're out.
Right.